Welcome to AlexGs Aquarium, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about my new aquarium system build. Go through all the different parts of it. To start off, I'm standing in the finished basement of my new house, and somewhere behind me is where the new display tanks are going to go. Now, I'm really not going to talk about the display tanks a whole lot because, well, there's a few reasons. One, I'm not 100% sure on the final build plans for my aquarium, so I'm not exactly sure what the size is going to be. Two, I've decided that I want to keep it a secret for right now. I'm not going to tell anyone about the displays. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep it a secret for very long, but who knows, maybe I won't talk about the displays or reveal them until they got fish and corals ready to go in them. But really the final reason I'm not going to talk about the displays is it's the lowest priority on my to-do list of things to do for the new aquarium system as a whole. And that is because of the temporary aquarium system. It is just that. It is temporary, and I need to get all the fish, all the corals out of that system, get them moved into a more permanent residence, which is why the focus of this build is going to be on the fish room and getting all the different parts of that done. Let's go back into the fish room now and talk about that part of the setup. Welcome to the fish room. This is going to be my dedicated space for all the aquarium filtration tanks, auxiliary tanks, fragging tanks. Everything that I'm going to be doing to help support the main displays is going to be going in this room. Now, a little bit about this fish room. It's about 750 square feet in area, and it does have the furnace, the hot water heater, plumbing, all that stuff for the unfinished part of the basement here. And I want to start off by just talking about the aquarium system in general, how it's going to run, which is going to be very similar to the aquarium system that I ran in my old home. It's going to consist of a 2-sump system. The first sump and primary sump of the system is going to be this 265-gallon sump that's behind me here. It's the same one that I used in my last tank. And even though it's upside down now, my old protein skimmer will be making a comeback. I'm going to be doing some modifications to it. I've already started on a couple of them, but I'm going to turbocharge the skimmer to make it even better after having 3 years of experience running it. And the other sump tank is going to be on the other side of the fish room. I don't have it yet. I'm going to build that sump. I'm not exactly sure how big it's going to be, but my last system I had 120 gallon for the secondary sump, but that really just is not going to be big enough. I want more surface area, so if there's a power outage, tanks start to drain, I have enough sump space to take that water on without having to try and deal with check valves, and I'm really going to try and avoid them if I can. Now, my last system, I had a 150 gallon refugium tank, and that is not going to be the refugium anymore. That tank is going to be in another part of the fish room here that I'm going to show you in a minute. But you'll see on this side of me, the old bracing system for the 720 gallon tank is set up here, and underneath the boxes and aquariums over here, the stand for the 720 gallon tank is built and underneath that. And the glass for the 720 gallon tank is right below where the camera is sitting right now, attached to the old face of the plywood aquarium. I'm going to be rebuilding the 720 gallon, at least that's the plan right now, and I'm going to turn that tank into a refugium for this system. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a little bit further down the line in the fish room projects, but the idea will be is to bring back this tank and make it a giant refugium, which I'm really looking forward to. It should be pretty spectacular what it's done. So just a short distance from where we were standing is the next part of the fish room. Now, I'm going to be keeping the 100-gallon water storage tanks I have. I have 2 of them. These are going to primarily serve as auto top-off tanks, so just RODI storage for the system. It's not really going to be used for water changes this time around, but it'll be some extra water on hand. I decided to keep these tanks just because I've already got them. I've got a stand for them. I have most of the plumbing, although I did break one of the plumbing fittings and unfortunately caused my first little flood down here when I was filling the tank up. But that's where these tanks are going to go for right now. Maybe one day I'll get some different tanks a little bit bigger, but for right now these 2 100-gallon storage tanks should do just fine here. Right here is the old stand for the 150 gallon tank, and the 150 is going to be coming back. Instead of a refugium this time though, it's going to be a dedicated tank to stomatopods or mantis shrimp. At least that's the plan right now. So that's where this tank is going to go. And on the other side of me here, I got my workbench here with the saw and stuff set up, but I have an old aquarium stand, actually one of the first ones I ever made, down below here. This is going to become a workbench. I'm going to put this on casters, probably put the microscopes, maybe a coral saw on here, or at least a fragging station. So this will be kind of a nice little workbench area. I might even put another little table or something on the other side of this to give myself plenty of space to work. Well, this area of the fish room is pretty self-explanatory. This is where the RODI system is going to be hooked up. It's going to stay. I'm going to be adding a utility sink down here. I think I'm just going to get one big giant utility sink tub with a faucet on it. Should work out great to put it right in here. I got some plumbing right around the corner here that I could tap into for hot, cold, and drain lines. So this is just a perfect spot to put a utility sink in. Now before I talk about this tank here, I want to talk about what's going on behind this tank. And I'm going to be taking a page out of Blue Carbon Reefing's book, and I'm going to buy a couple of water storage tanks that are going to go in line with the aquarium system. So they're going to be filled up with salt water and part of the system running in its normal operation. Now the reason I'm doing this is because when I saw what Blue Carbon Reefer was doing, I said, I have to do that in my next system. And here's why. Having water storage tanks integrated into your aquarium system offers three things. First, I see it as a way to just have extra water volume in the system, which is always good to help at least a little bit with some stability in the nitrogen cycle. Two, I see that as a great way to have emergency water on hand. If there's a spill or something happens, you need to have water. That will give me water on hand when I need it. I could close some valves, isolate the tanks, drain them down to a little lower level if need be. And that'll give me more water to just have on hand in case of emergency. And the final reason is to have an easy way to do water changes without having to just disrupt the whole system. What I plan to do is have the water from this tank drain into the water storage tanks through gravity, and then if I want to isolate those water storage tanks, I'll close a couple of valves and I'll divert the drain from this tank to another drain line, and that'll allow me to be able to pump the water out of those storage tanks, refill them with the RODI unit, mix the salt water and heat it, and then when I'm ready, I could just turn some valves and the water change is done. Give me more time and flexibility to do water changes. I don't have to try and time it all at once, and I could take my time doing it. So that's one of the things I really wanted to do with this system, and I really just want to say thanks to Blue Carbon Reefer for sharing that. Now the final tank I'm going to talk about in the fish room is this tank right here. Now ultimately this is going to become the frag tank for my new aquarium system. But more importantly, it's also going to become the new home for all the fish and corals in the temporary tank. I plan to get this tank and the 265 gallon sump online first. Now when I moved into my new house, I had pretty much all the big aquarium stuff moved down into this unfinished part of the basement. The only thing that I didn't move down here was the aquarium rocks, as I just figured they're going to take up a lot of space, and I really had no use for them down here, as they're just not going to be needed for some time. But when the movers were done and I moved the temp aquarium over, I had to get to work right away in this fish room. The first thing I did was set up that RODI unit. I got into the hot and cold water lines, put some shutoffs in, and then I tapped into my main drain line of the house so that I could have a waste line for the RODI unit, and at the same time I plumbed in a pump out for water changes, which is just on a threaded fitting, so if it has to be removed to access the clean out, you can do that. You never want to do changes to the house that are going to be permanent on plumbing like that. Always make it temporary. Once I got that stuff done, I really was thinking about what I wanted to do down here in the fish room, and the first thing that came to mind is I wanted the floor to be epoxy painted. So I moved everything to one side of the room. I cleaned the floor, vacuumed the floor, scrubbed the floor, and then I laid down epoxy paint. A few days later, I repeated the process, moving everything to the other side, and got the other side of the floor painted. I then started thinking more and more about how I wanted to lay this fish room out, and I gotta be perfectly honest, I really didn't know what I was gonna do. I assembled the stands for my old reef aquarium, which is right here, and the old 720 gallon on the other side of the room. And once I had that done, I said, well, let me start arranging tanks and putting things into place to see if it made sense. Originally, I had this tank pushed back further to the wall, not all the way up to it, but further back. And then I decided, well, if I want water storage tanks, where are they going to go? Ultimately, I decided that I would put them back there. So with the layout of the room done, I started working on this tank as I knew what I wanted to do here. And I'm going to have more videos on this tank, as this is not going to be a standard plywood tank. It might look like one, but I have done 2x4 bracing on the front and the sides and the back, similar to what I did on my 720 gallon tank. The difference is, though, with the temporary tank working out with a pond liner, I've decided that I'm going to turn this into a pond liner aquarium with a glass face. Never done this before, and I'm going to be trying a few new things out with it. So fingers crossed I do everything right and I don't have a flood. Hopefully my wife doesn't hear that. But in any case, before I even get that done, I have a lot of other work to get done. But I found with this aquarium project, I'm very much overwhelmed with things to do. I've got a huge to-do list back here, and everywhere I look, I go, hey, I got this to do. Oh wait, what about this to do? Oh wait, there's this. I've had to try and put a pause on myself so that I don't go overboard with things. I got work on this done. When I reached the point where I was like, I don't know how I want to do something, I stopped and moved on to something else. I've also got the electrical roughed in, and for all the fans of Dexter out there that used to call my old fish room ceiling the Dexter ceiling, well, I'm happy to announce the Dexter ceiling's back. I've got most of it up now, but that's going to be one of my moisture barriers going up. I'm also going to be putting up FRP boards along all these unfinished walls to help protect these walls from moisture, and I'm going to seal them up. And I've got to get a humidity control system in place for this fish room, which this time around I'm going to be going with a ducted whole house dehumidifier. At least that's the initial plan. It should have enough capacity to deal with all the humidity in here. And because it's going to be ducted, I'm going to target the humidity and the moisture in the air right from its source. Now the dehumidifier is also going to be controlling humidity for the main display tanks by using its ducted fan to pull air through the display. But as I said, I have to get all the fish room stuff done before I work on displays. So the tentative plan right now is to get all the larger components done with the moisture proofing, the electrical. Then I'm going to work on this tank and the 265. Once that's completed, I'm going to probably bring the 150 gallon online, the 720 online, and the secondary sump, along with the extra water storage tanks. Overall, this is a huge project. It's going to take a while. I don't have timetables other than I'd really like to get the temporary tank taken down, but at the same time, I really want to take my time. I'm really going to try and take my time with this build, do everything the way that I want to, and take my time doing it. Once I have the temporary tank moved over and I can get everything back to normal and I finish all the fish room stuff, at that point in time I will start working on the displays. That's the update on where my aquarium system build is at right now. I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, if you have comments or questions, leave them down below in the comment section, and I will see you on the next video.